Today we'll be talking about the fine art of shouting very loudly at your men to make them do things twice as well. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, the strategy and tactics focused 40k channel, where we're all about getting the most out of our miniatures on the tabletop. And in all of 40k, there seem to be few things that get more out of our models than having some bloke standing next to them shouting orders at them. Today we'll take a look at the orders available to us in the Astra Militarum Codex. We'll be focusing on infantry today, as we discussed tank orders a little bit in our Tank Commanders video that came out a couple of days ago. In this video we'll discuss a few of the various sources of orders and how to use them efficiently, and run through each order available to the guard for our infantry. So without further ado, let's get into it. Firstly, voice of command is the orders rule for the Imperial Guard. You can only issue orders to infantry units, and they must have the same regiment keyword as this unit if the unit issuing the order has a regiment keyword. The most standard way that we'll get orders into our Imperial Guard army are through company commanders and platoon commanders. Company commanders can issue 2 orders per turn, and platoon commanders can issue 1 order per turn. Typically the company commanders are going to be more efficient because they're 30 points for 2 orders, so 15 points per order, when platoon commanders are 20 points for 1 order, so 20 points per order, so are a little bit less efficient. Company commanders also help fill out those HQ slots to help fill out battalions, so are in general my preferred way of doing things, but both are perfectly viable. There are ways where you can get more orders or buff those orders. Firstly, we have Voxcasters. The Vox rule means that you stand next to a Voxcaster with your ordering model, and then provided the other squad also has a Voxcaster in it, you can issue orders to anyone within 18 inches. It's not awful, to be honest, but personally I prefer just to take those points invested in Voxcasters and just invest them in more sources of orders in the first place, as in general it really isn't all that hard to chain infantry squads back to be ordered by your company commander, or move the company commander up to support the infantry squad. I don't honestly think that a Vox network is worth it as the current points stand. It'd be a lot more tempting if they didn't have a limited range of 18 inches, and you could just throw orders all over the battlefield via the Vox network. There are a bunch of special characters that can issue more orders or have special rules with them. Firstly, Creed can issue 3 per turn, and his voice of command ability is 12-inch range, so he's very flexible in himself already, and I think that he's fairly well balanced with just running the equivalent points in company commanders for a unique Cadian option. Ironhand Strachan is also a company commander who can issue 2 orders, as well as his extra attacks rule, and Tempestor Primes are the ones that you'll need to issue orders to your Militarum Tempestus squads. They'll either be able to issue 1 order per turn, or if you specifically equip them with a command rod, then they can issue 2 orders. I would typically always do this if you are dropping alongside 2 Militarum Tempestus squads to make sure both of them can get an order that turn. There are some stratagems, warlord traits and relics that can help you out with orders too. Firstly and most obviously is Inspired Tactics for 1 command point. This will allow your officer to just issue an additional order this turn. To be honest, it's not ideal to be spending 1 command point for 1 order. It's not typically going to be worth it, but in the rare scenario that you absolutely need to have 2 or 3 different squads all doing the actions of an order this turn, it could be worth it. My main rule of thumb for using this one is look at the 3 options that you're going to order with your company commander and decide whether you could live without one of those 3 to save 1 command point. Typically, I think the answer is going to be that 1 command point is more valuable than the least valuable of those 3 orders, so it's not honestly one that I use very much myself. We also have Mobile Command Vehicle, which can allow your officer to issue orders from inside a Chimera, and they do this via the Vox network. So any squads outside of the Chimera need to have a Voxcaster in the squad if they want to receive orders, and those orders can be received from 18 inches of the Chimera. This isn't one that I'd personally use myself. As I said, I'm not the biggest fan of paying for Voxcasters. It also requires you to spend a command point per turn just to issue those orders that you would be able to use for free otherwise, so this isn't an option I'd personally take advantage of. In terms of relics, we have the Laurels of Command, which is a 4+ chance to issue an additional order to the same unit that you just issued an order to. Now this one has the potential to be really good if you do pass that 4+ chance, because it means that you could combine, say, 2 offensive orders on the same unit. For example, ordering your lasguns to both first rank fire, second rank fire, and also reroll 1s to hit. Those 2 different buffs will have good synergy, as you'll be rerolling 1s to hit for all of those extra shots. So when it works, this is quite nice. It's naturally going to be better on a company commander with more orders to give you more chances to trigger this. The Militarum Tempestus also have a relic that helps orders. The Tactical Auto Reliquary of Tiberius will allow you to issue an additional order with that model per turn on a roll of a 2+. Not exactly the most game-changing relic in the world, but does give you a meaningful advantage. Warlord traits also give us some options. Firstly, we have Bellowing Voice, which adds 3 inches to the Voice of Command aura ability, so will allow them to issue orders at 9-inch range. I probably wouldn't take this one just for orders though, to be honest, as gaining 3-inch isn't all that much and you could easily just fit them within 6-inch most of the time. We also have Master of Command, which again is just the ability to issue 1 additional order. And Yarick has this one, so if you make Yarick your warlord, he'll be able to order around your squads like he was a platoon commander as well. This one could be a reasonable one to stack with Laurels of Command, so your company commander will have 3 orders that have a 4+ chance of getting 2 orders each onto the same unit. Acadians also have a unique warlord trait that can help with orders, which is Superior Tactical Training, which is roll a dice each time your warlord issues an order. On a 4+, that same order can affect an additional Cadian unit of the same type as the original target, so say another infantry unit within 6 inches of the warlord. So typically for your standard Cadian company commander, this will usually equate to 3 orders output per turn. And again, you could combine this with the Laurels of Command. I'd also note that this is Creed's one, so if Creed is your warlord, he'll be typically issuing 4.5 orders per turn, or if you go absolutely mental and use Kell to give him an additional order and Inspired Tactics to give him 1 more, Creed will average 7.5 orders just from 1 guy. He'll be out of breath by the end of that, I expect. I would bear in mind though that you can get almost the same effect as that with just 3 regular company commanders without having to use warlord traits or relics or stratagems and things. So now we've actually covered how we get orders to be on our units, let's actually look at the ones that we have available. Orders are issued at the start of your shooting phase, and it depends on the exact wording of the order as to whether you resolve its effects then and there when issued, or whether they just give you a buff for the rest of the shooting phase. It is important that you issue your orders before going on to the rest of the shooting, as technically this is how it happens. Most of the time it doesn't make the single blindest bit of difference, but it's good manners to do it that way. And occasionally you might get people who say things like, yes, you issued 1st rank fire, 2nd rank fire to that unit, then shot with it. That means you're not allowed to do any more orders this phase, because technically you should have issued the rest of your orders before resolving that shooting attack. That particular example happened to me at a tournament once. It wasn't the most sportsmanlike behaviour of my opponent, and it certainly didn't save him from having Magnus and Mortarion gunned off the table by a guard infantry line. So all's well that ends well, I suppose. The lesson was, though, that I now make sure that I issue all the orders in the proper sequence and resolve the effects when it says you do. I certainly wouldn't be that picky if I was playing against another guard player who did shoot with the unit that he ordered immediately after he ordered it, but I might gently remind them that you're supposed to issue all the orders before resolving units that have 1st rank, 2nd rank fires. All that aside, let's look into them. Firstly, we have Take Aim, nice simple reroll hit rolls of 1, generically useful on most of your infantry squads, and if you happen to be Cadian and standing still, then instead you get to reroll all misses for your unit. For standard infantry squads, this competes against 1st rank, 2nd rank fire, which is changing your lasguns from rapid fire 1 to rapid fire 2 for the rest of the phase. Note that in the wording that neither of these say that you should immediately shoot with the unit as it was in last edition. For standard infantry squads, choosing which of these 2 to use will generally depend on how many heavy or special weapons you have, and whether it's going to be the lasguns or the heavy or special weapons doing the primary damage when you're shooting with them. If you're firing against light infantry, I'd generally go for 1st rank, 2nd rank, as that doubles your main source of anti-infantry firepower. If you're needing to chip wounds off a tank, I typically go for reroll hit rolls of 1. Sure, the lasguns don't get anywhere near as much of a bonus, but at least it does help your primary anti-tank weapons in the unit, such as plasma guns or lascannons for example. Take Aim rerolling hit rolls of 1 is also great for plasma weapons, as it helps you overcharge in relative safety, knowing that you can reroll any of those fatal rolls of 1 for your unit. In particular, Take Aim is great for company commanders sat at the back of the battlefield, who may be sitting next to things like heavy weapons teams, or infantry squads with some heavy weapons in, and just get that tiny little bit of extra firepower, while they stay safe and maybe carry relics or are your warlord. Next we have Bring It Down, which is reroll wound rolls of 1 for all models in the ordered unit until the end of the phase. Mathematically, this is exactly the same as Take Aim, rerolling 1s to hit. Both of these orders give you a 17% increase to your unit's expected damage output, no matter which one you use. So in most scenarios it doesn't really matter unless you already have a source of rerolls of ones to hit, say in terms of your Cadians, or if you have Yarrick or Harker about, or if you already have a source of reroll wound rolls such as the Warlord trait Old Grudges. Outside of those it doesn't really matter which one you use, unless you're thinking about overcharging plasma or something. Next we have Forwards for the Emperor, the one where you can shoot even if you advance this turn and let your guardsmen pretend to be Talon. This is good for keeping up decent firepower even when you need the extra movement that an advance roll would bring. Say if you just need to secure an objective, but don't need to go so far that you need to move to it. Next we have Get Back in the Fight. This is the one that allows your guardsmen to shoot even if they fell back this turn, and this was particularly punishing in early 8th, when virtually no models in the game could do this, and made combating Imperial Guard infantry really quite a thorny prospect, even if you managed to tag them in close combat. Again, this is very good for getting a little bit of extra firepower out of a squad that wouldn't be able to shoot otherwise. Next we have Move, which in all honesty might well be the most powerful order out of the entire repertoire that we have here. Sure, some of the others give you better damage output, but these ones will allow your guardsmen to move as fast or faster than Eldar jetbikes. When you issue this order, the unit immediately moves and advances as if it were the movement phase, so you essentially get anywhere between 7 and 12 inches extra movement. You can issue this even if you have already advanced in the movement phase, so your Imperial Guard infantry squad could be potentially going up to 24 inches per turn if you happen to roll a double 6 for both advance rolls. Now this one makes your Imperial Guard battle line incredibly good at securing objectives and screening out the enemy. For me, it often means that I don't even need any deep strike units to secure enemy objectives in their deployment zone, provided I have an infantry squad to jog up the field alongside a company commander. This can catapult them right into the enemy lines and potentially whisk away an objective from under your opponent's nose. It's also incredibly fun if you're fighting a ground-based melee unit that really wants to be coming towards your battle lines as fast as it can. Things like Lord Discordants or Knight Gallants are great examples of this. If you have first turn, I'd have a couple of infantry squads on the front of your battle line and use move to slingshot them right up the board and basically have them stand just out of heroic intervention range in front of those heavy hitting close combat monsters. If you fan right out, then you're going to completely move block them. They might be barely able to move out of their deployment zone next turn, and they'll keep your main battle line from being charged for at least one additional turn. And then if you have more infantry squads and haven't dealt with the threat, you could potentially rinse and repeat, leading to a very frustrated Knight Gallant or Lord Discordant that isn't coming anywhere near your tanks anytime soon. Finally, move is great for use on the officer themselves, where getting extra movement is often going to be better than any sort of damage output they can do, as they're just one weak infantry character. Because this order happens exactly when you do it, the unit that's ordered moves immediately. You can use this to have a guard commander shout at himself to get that extra movement, and then they can issue their second order to an infantry squad they've just managed to get in range of. This is really good for correcting a little bit of poor positioning on your part in the movement phase, to ensure that you get that order to the squad that needs it, even if they were just outside 6-inch range before this. Alternatively, when your battle line's getting pretty much chewed up, and if you don't have any actual infantry squads to order, this can be used to send your now fairly useless company commander off on a very long run to capture an objective that turn that would otherwise be far out of your range to be able to reach. Finally, if it's your warlord, or a character bearing an important relic, then move used on the same character is a great tool to be able to get them right out of harm's way, even if they were out on their own for a turn. Move could let them beetle along the edge of the board, right out of the way of most enemy threats, or maybe get them behind one of your other units to keep them safe again. It's a really flexible order, incredibly strong, if perhaps a bit of a silly mental image, as guardsmen manage to outpace people with jetpacks and bikes just because some guy is shouting at them. Lastly, out of the standard orders, we have Fixed Bayonets. This is the one to allow your Imperial Guard to fight as if it were the fight phase in the shooting phase, to get a few additional attacks on an enemy in close combat if you didn't want to fall back and shoot with Get Back in the Fight. I'd say that this one is most useful on your Katachan infantry, particularly if they have either Strachan or a priest or both around, where you could potentially be getting 3 strength 4 attacks per guardsman, and then have those guardsmen both fight in the shooting phase and also in the fight phase for a potential 6 attacks per turn. You can also do a pretty fun little combo with the Katachans, where if you do have a Katachan unit that's locked in melee, you can use Consolidate squads to get another full 10-man squad of infantry to bolster them, and then use this order in the shooting phase. So now you have a potentially 20-man strong Kashan infantry, maybe with extra attacks, going hammer and tongs at the enemy in both the shooting phase and the fight phase. Theoretically up to 120 attacks from 2 infantry squads and an officer, if they're next to a priest and Strachan. So that's the list of orders that you have available then. Choosing the right order for the right situation is definitely one of the areas where you can be a bit better as a guard general. I certainly have occasion to use most of them on a fairly regular basis, the most common being move, 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 take aim and first rank fire, second rank fire, though literally all the rest can apply and be quite powerful in their own certain scenarios. Let's move on to the regiment specific orders now. Acadians get a tank order, which we discussed last time, very good, but we're focusing on infantry orders today. Kaschans get burn them out, which allows you to re-roll the dice when you're attacking with a unit armed with flamers or heavy flamers. So usually if you roll a 1, 2 or 3 with any of your flamer weapons for determining the amount of shots they get, you will re-roll that and have a better chance of getting more. Now in terms of damage output, this is only a fairly small increase, and personally I'm not the biggest fan of flamer weapons as they're pointed in the guard at the moment, but the second part of the order is really quite useful, and it means that the targeted unit won't get any bonus to their armor save for being in cover this turn. Could be quite handy with all of the cover saves that are going round, particularly in elite armies like Space Marines, or armies with always in cover abilities such as Stealthy. It could be worth just scattering a few flamers here and there in your Kaschan army, just in case you have the chance to use this and help out your heavier firepower that might be trying to shift a unit that's dug in cover. The Valhallan order is fire on my command, and this is an ability for your infantry units to fire into close combat. If you roll a 1, then it hits your own friendly unit, is the main downside. To be honest, I do find this one a bit of a situational order. Despite playing my men as Valhallan for quite a while, I never found myself using it. Usually I'd just prefer to fall back from the target, or if I didn't, then I was probably quite happy that my men could lock the target up, so I wouldn't need to fire any more shots at them. And to be honest, with most infantry units that you can order, the amount of firepower you're likely to get from an infantry squad isn't the best. I'd say this could be most useful either when you have just one of your infantry models surrounded by enemy units and unable to fall back, when the aim could actually be to kill your infantry model with your own shooting and allow those enemy units to be targeted by your own guns, or maybe if your infantry are locking up a vehicle and you could fire some las cannons from a heavy weapons team or something into that target anyway. Next we have Vostroyans, who have repel the enemy. This will allow your squad that's in combat to fire their weapons at the enemy, even though you can't normally fire your heavy weapons or rapid fire weapons when in close combat. Could be potentially good for inflicting a few extra casualties on an enemy infantry unit, and it will be generally better than fixed bayonets, so a nice upgrade there, though again it's quite situational as it implies that you've been charged, not destroyed, and then you don't want to fall back yourself. Next up we have Armageddon, the order to mount up. This allows an Armageddon unit to shoot and then immediately get back in their transport vehicle, provided they're all within range to do so. This could be quite good for keeping a pricey infantry unit such as a veteran squad alive for an extra turn. It's going to be most useful if you are trying to pursue a bit of a mechanised infantry strategy, and it's certainly a good one to have in the back of your mind. It is a bit restrictive though, in that you can't have just disembarked from the transport vehicle, so you couldn't do a get out, shoot and then get back in sort of trick. So basically your infantry squad would have already been exposed to a turn of enemy shooting. Next we have the Militarum Tempestus, who I'd say have the single strongest regiment unique infantry order. This one is Elimination Protocol sanctioned and allows the ordered unit to reroll failed wound rolls when they're targeting enemy vehicles or monsters. Now this is a really big power boost to special weapons in your Militarum Tempestus squads. It's absolutely great on plasma guns for melting through toughness 8 tanks. Just in general, 4 rerolls to wound are really hard to come by in the game, so it's certainly a very nice order to have, particularly as it'll be quite commonly used, as you could certainly use this alongside Tempestus Scion squads dropping out of the sky, trying to eliminate enemy hard targets next to a Tempestor Prime. I certainly like this one a lot. Finally we come to Mordian, and their order is Form Firing Squad, to allow your infantry unit to target characters even if they're not the closest enemy unit, but this is restricted to just using it on rapid fire weapons, so sadly no using your las cannons in the backfield as impromptu snipers. It's probably going to be most powerful on a squad of plasma veterans, provided you can somehow deliver them into range of the enemy characters, or perhaps if you're looking at a very weak enemy infantry character across the board, something like an Eldar Warlock is a great example, then your lasguns might well be just enough to finish them off. Situational, but if you are pushing forward with a lot of Mordian infantry, situations might present themselves when it becomes useful. So that's my summary of the regiment unique orders. It's always good to have more options, but to be frank, most of these just don't compete very well with the standard orders that you're going to be issuing each turn. Most of them are pretty situational. The only one that I think is very reliable is the Militarum Tempestus one, and I could certainly see myself using that whenever the Tempestus signs get a drop on one of their chosen targets. So that's orders then. I think they're really quite a well implemented system that do deliver meaningful buffs to your infantry units and make the Imperial Guard function a bit differently to the rest of the standard races out there with their aura bubbles, reroll ones or other similar abilities. Let me know if you've got any other advice or experience with these, or if you've had any particular success with any of the less common orders. It'd certainly be good to hear any experience that you have down in the comments below. Feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics if you'd like to see more guard videos every 2 days. Our next video will be on a comparison of the Shadow Sword, Hellhammer and all the other Baneblade variants. It's been quite good fun to make some maths on those, so feel free to subscribe if you'd like to see that. I also have a Patreon page, so if you'd like to support the channel by leaving a donation, you'll find the link in the description. And of course a big thank you to my current Patreons. It really helps to support the channel as making all of these YouTube videos does take a lot of time. So thank you very much for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys in the next video.